A single father. A wrong delivery, he knocked on the wrong door. Just another tired mistake on a long day. But the woman who opened it didn't look confused. She looked like she'd been waiting. Sometimes the smallest misstep isn't a mistake at all. It's the first step back towards something you thought was lost forever. If you love stories filled with quiet miracles, second chances, and the kind of love that grows where you least expect it, make sure to subscribe to our channel for more heartwarming tales that remind us what truly matters. Now take a deep breath. Let's begin. Struggling single dad delivered to the wrong floor. The woman at the door said, "I waited for you." Sometimes the wrong floor leads you to the right door. Jack Mercer had learned not to expect much from elevators. They creaked, stalled, and occasionally ignored the buttons you pressed like they had somewhere better to be. This one ancient brass-trimmed, the kind you'd find in an old movie, lurched to a stop before he'd even realized it had moved. The glowing 19 above the door flickered, then steadied. Definitely not the 12th floor. He glanced at the crumpled delivery slip in his hand, the one with an ink-smudged unit number and no recipient's name. Not unusual, the app was buggy and sometimes clients mistyped their floor. He sighed, shifting the heavy cardboard box in his arms. The scent of old wood and expensive polish lingered in the hall. The kind of scent that didn't exist where he lived. "Daddy, is this the place?" A small voice called from behind him. Lily stood just outside the elevator, her school backpack almost as big as her. Her dark eyes, so much like his late brother's, searched his face for an answer. She was used to tagging along during deliveries now, since the after-school care had gotten too expensive. Jack forced a smile. "Might be. Let's double-check." He set the box down, carefully pulling out his phone to compare the order. No reception. Of course. Well, it was either stand there and wait for another elevator or try the door. He knocked gently at first, then again firmer this time. The door opened. The woman on the other side didn't move. Didn't even blink at first. She was dressed in a warm-colored sweater and slate-gray pants, barefoot on polished wood floors. Her hair was the color of strong coffee curled at the ends, like it had forgotten it, once obeyed a brush. But it was her eyes that stunned him, storm gray wide and suddenly full of something he couldn't name. They stared at each other like two pages torn from the same book. Jack opened his mouth to explain. "Sorry, I think I've got the wrong floor," but she whispered before he could finish, her voice catching somewhere between disbelief and breathlessness. "I waited for you." Jack blinked. For a moment he wondered if she'd mistaken him for someone else. Then a strange tightness gripped his chest. Her face, it was familiar. Familiar in a way that stirred something buried and long forgotten. Not a face he'd seen recently, but one he'd carried in the quieter corners of memory. From another life, Clara. The name escaped him like a prayer he hadn't known he was holding. A pause. Then a half-smile, shocked, fragile, teetering on the edge of tears. "You remember?" He stepped back, slightly trying to steady the weight in his chest. "Yeah? It's been a long time, 10 years, she said quietly. He almost dropped the box. There was no time to think. Lily tugged at his jacket, grounding him. "Daddy, what's going on?" Clara's eyes flicked down to the girl beside him. She didn't speak. Something behind her eyes shifted, softened, then steeled again. Jack crouched beside Lily, his voice low and careful. "Sweetheart, could you wait by the elevator for a moment? But just a minute, okay? Promise." Lily frowned, clearly curious, but obeyed. She walked a few steps back and sat cross-legged on the hallway carpet, pretending not to listen. Jack turned back toward Clara. "I didn't know you lived here," he said. "Like that explained anything. I moved in last year." She crossed her arms. "What are you doing here, Jack?" "Delivering packages," he nodded. "Yeah, just part-time, long story." Another silence, the kind that feels longer than it is. He glanced at the box. "I should go. I think this was a mistake," but Clara didn't move. "You disappeared. Jack, one day you were there, and the next gone. No message, no goodbye." He looked away. "It wasn't that simple. I begged you to stay." Her voice was quieter now, not angry, just tired. "Do you remember?" He did. He remembered everything. The makeshift medical tent in Kenya where they'd both volunteered, her laugh bright and reckless, echoing under a canvas roof. The late-night confessions, the promise of someday. "But someday never came. I had to leave," he said finally. Why, Jack shook his head. You don't want to hear this now. Not like this. I waited. Clara repeated, her voice cracking. I waited for a letter, a call, anything, and then I heard you got married. Jack flinched. Clara pressed her lips together. I'm sorry, that's not fair of me. No, it's okay. He picked up the box again, his fingers tightening on the edges. I didn't expect to see you again. I didn't know what to say. Start with the truth, she said softly. Not now, not here, but someday. He gave a faint nod, swallowed something bitter. I'll bring the box downstairs. But just as he turned, Clara's voice stopped him again. Jack. He turned back. Her eyes weren't angry anymore. Just tired, curious. And underneath it all, something fragile and unfinished. I don't believe in accidents, she said. Wrong floor or not. He looked at her for a long moment, then nodded. I don't either. As he and Lily stepped into the elevator, he felt the weight of years pressing down like thunderclouds. But somewhere beneath it, a strange lightness stirred, like something lost was shifting just enough to be found again. The door closed, and for the first time in 10 years, Jack Mercer couldn't stop thinking about the woman on the other side. Some ghosts don't haunt, they wait. Jack didn't speak on the ride down. Lily, wedged beside him in the rickety elevator, with her knees pulled to her chest, watched him closely. She had her mother's quietness, but not her aloofness. She studied people the way a painter studies shadows, and now she was studying him. Was that someone you knew? She asked. Jack kept his gaze on the metal doors. A long time ago, she seemed surprised. He almost smiled at how simply Lily put it. Surprised. That wasn't the word. Shocked, wounded, unmoored. Clara Winslow had opened her door as if she'd seen a ghost. She wasn't sure she still believed in. Jack didn't blame her. He'd looked in the mirror plenty of times over the years and not recognized himself either. They reached the lobby. Jack held the box tighter than necessary as they walked out into the early evening light. A thin wind brushed past them, sharp with the chill of spring not yet fully bloomed. Lily hurried to keep up. The delivery was a bust. He dropped the box back in the truck and checked his phone. Still no reception. He'd figure out the right floor later. Maybe tomorrow, maybe never. You okay, Daddy? Lily asked, climbing into the front seat of their rust-bitten pickup. Jack exhaled and nodded. Yeah, Bug, just a surprise, that's all. She gave him a look that said she wasn't buying it but didn't press. That night after dinner, in a third reading of Charlotte's Web, Jack sat alone at the kitchen table. His small apartment buzzed faintly with the hum of the refrigerator, the occasional rattle of pipes. The kind of background noise you didn't notice until you were trying not to think Clara Winslow. He hadn't said her name out loud in more than a decade, but it had never left him. They'd met under a tarp in the middle of a flood zone where people were dying and the world felt too big to survive. She was a communications officer with a nonprofit, fiery and sharp-tongued, while he was still chasing war zones with a camera in his hand and nothing in his pockets. They'd fallen fast, stupidly maybe, but it had felt like something real, and then it had ended. He rubbed his temples. The past wasn't supposed to follow you into elevator shafts, but it had. The next afternoon, he stood in front of the same door. Unit 19D, he hadn't meant to come back. Not really, he told himself. He was just redelivering the box, a professional courtesy. Nothing more. He wasn't even sure if she'd answer. She might be at work or out, or... The door opened before he knocked. Clara. This time she was wearing a dark blouse, sleeves rolled to the elbows. Her hair was pulled back, and there was a mug in her hand, steam curling above the rim. For a second, she just looked at him. Then, without speaking, she stepped aside. Jack hesitated. I don't want to intrude. You're not... Her voice was steady, even kind. You brought the box. He held it up like a peace offering. She gave a half smile and let him inside. The apartment was elegant, but lived in books stacked beside the couch, a sweater draped over the armrest. Warm tones, natural light. The scent of cinnamon and coffee clung faintly to the air. It didn't feel like a showpiece. It felt like a life. He placed the box gently on the kitchen island. You can stay, she said. Jack turned. I don't want to make this harder. You already did that, Jack. She leaned against the counter. But since you're here, you might as well answer the one question that stayed with me for 10 years. He swallowed. Okay, why did you leave? It was a quiet question, no drama, no edge, just the dull ache of someone finally asking what they'd carried for too long. Jack ran a hand through his hair. My brother died. Clara blinked. I didn't know. Car crash, back in Michigan. His daughter Lily was 2 at the time. There was no one else. Clara's voice was softer now. So you came back to raise her? Eventually, he nodded, but it wasn't that simple. There was a custody battle brewing. A neighbor wanted to foster her. She was sick, but the court favored stability over blood ties. So, he looked away. I married her. Clara stood very still. You what? It was the only way I could keep Lily legal guardianship through marriage. Hannah, her name was Hannah, she knew the deal. There was no love between us, just a shared desire to keep Lily safe. Clara pressed her fingers to her lips. She died 4 years later, Jack added quietly. Heart condition. Silence fell between them again, heavy as snowfall. I didn't tell you, he said finally, because I didn't know how I was angry and scared and selfish. I thought disappearing would hurt you less than dragging you into it. Clara met his eyes, and for the first time he didn't see anger there. Only grief and maybe beneath it understanding. Do you know what the worst part was? She asked. Jack shook his head. I didn't stop loving you. That hit harder than anything she could have thrown. I kept thinking, maybe you'd write or call. Maybe it was some misunderstanding. I checked every new email for your name. Every time my phone buzzed. For months, Jack lowered his gaze. I'm sorry. You don't get to say that yet, she said, but her voice wasn't cruel. It was just honest. Jack nodded slowly. Fair. She turned back toward the sink, the light catching her face at an angle that reminded him of an early morning in Rwanda, her face lit by sun through mosquito netting. She set her coffee down, then looked at him. She's beautiful, by the way, Lily. A strange warmth moved through his chest. Yeah, she's the best thing that ever happened to me. You're a good father. Jack laughed quietly, a sound more sad than amused. I'm trying. Most days, I just hope I don't mess her up. Clara leaned her hip against the counter. We all mess up. It's what we do after that counts. Jack studied her face. Older, now wiser, but still Clara. Still the woman he had fallen in love with in the middle of nowhere. He took a breath. I'm not here to ask for anything. He said I just didn't want the last thing between us to be silence. Clara nodded, then unexpectedly she opened a drawer and pulled out a familiar envelope. His handwriting, I never opened it, she said. Found it in the bottom of an old bag years ago, postmarked but never delivered. He stared at it. I must have forgotten to mail it. She offered it to him. You want to read it together? Jack hesitated, then reached for it. For the first time in years, they sat down side by side, not as strangers, not as what-ifs, but as two people brave enough to face what was left between them. You never really forget the face of someone you imagined a future with. The envelope sat unopened between them, a fragile relic from another life. Jack looked at it like it might burn him. The paper had yellowed at the edges. The ink slightly faded, but the handwriting was unmistakably his shaky, rushed, probably written on a layover, or in the corner of a noisy terminal. That was how he used to live back then. Always leaving. Clara didn't touch it either. They both sat in silence at her kitchen island. Two people in their 40s who looked calm on the outside but carried small earthquakes inside. The years hadn't made them better at dealing with feelings, they'd only gotten better at hiding them. You can open it, Jack said finally, his voice low. Clara shook her head slowly. No, not yet. Maybe not today. Jack didn't press. Instead, she stood moved across the room to a tall cabinet near the window and pulled out a large black portfolio. She laid it gently on the counter, slid open the clasp, and began flipping through its contents with care of photographs. She turned it so he could see. Jack leaned closer. He hadn't seen these in years, not since they were taken. His hand twitched as he recognized the scenes. The clay-red horizon of Zambia tents under rain-heavy skies, a barefoot boy chasing a yellow balloon in a war-torn village. And then Clara, not posed, not looking, just her sitting on a supply crate, laughing at something outside the frame, sunlight tangling in her hair. The edges of the photo were frayed, like it had been handled too often, or maybe pressed too tightly against memory. I kept these, she said softly, turning another page. There was more him this time. Behind the lens out of focus, caught in the reflection of a Jeep window, another shot the two of them standing at a village well mid-conversation, her hand resting absent-mindedly on his arm. They were never meant to be professional. She said, I just couldn't throw them away. Jack stared at the images. They didn't look like moments. They looked like truths. It doesn't feel like 10 years, he murmured. And at the same time, it feels like a lifetime ago. It was Clara closed the portfolio gently. You're not the same man in those photos. He hesitated. Is that a good thing? I don't know yet. She gave him a small smile. You tell me. Jack rubbed the back of his neck. I try to be better now. I don't run anymore. She didn't say anything for a moment. Then, except when you knocked on the wrong door, he chuckled, and the sound surprised both of them. They sat there a while, not quite ready to part ways, but unsure how to move forward. Jack kept thinking about Lily and what she'd say if she saw him sitting here. About the box he'd pretended was the reason for coming back. About the letter still untouched on the counter. Finally, Clara spoke. Would you like to come for dinner sometime this week, just to talk? He looked up. Her expression wasn't hopeful or expectant. It was steady, grounded. Like someone finally planting something after too many seasons of drought. I'd like that, Jack said. Then paused. Lily would too, if that's okay. A flicker passed through her eyes, surprise perhaps, or something softer. Of course I'd like to meet her. Jack stood slowly, as if afraid he'd shatter the moment by moving too fast. I should go. Clara walked him to the door. Before he stepped out, he turned back. Clara. She met his eyes. I'm sorry, he said again, not for closure, but as a beginning. She nodded. We all carry our regrets. Jack, the lucky ones, find a way to lay them down. Outside, the hallway felt different, not warmer, not colder, just lighter. He didn't know what to call it. Maybe it was hope, or maybe it was memory making room for something new. That night, back in their apartment, Lily sat cross-legged on the carpet, sorting through old photo albums Jack had kept boxed for years. She loved going through them, especially the ones from before. Who's this? She asked, holding up a photo of Jack in a khaki shirt squinting under a desert sun. That's me, Jack said, sitting beside her with a plate of toast. You look tired, he laughed. I probably was. And this, she pointed to another. A woman, laughing, sitting in the sun. Clara. Jack paused. That's someone I knew a long time ago. Is she nice? He considered it. Yes, she is. Lily gave him a look, that knowing, curious look that made her seem older than 10. Did you love her? Jack exhaled. I think part of me always did. She was quiet for a moment. Are you going to see her again? He smiled. Yeah, Bug, I think I will. Somewhere across town, Clara sat alone with the letter still unopened on the counter. She touched it with her fingertips, then slid it back into the drawer. Not tonight, but soon. She poured herself a glass of wine and returned to her desk. She pulled out a journal, the leather worn from years of avoiding writing the truth, and began a new page, April 12th. He came back. Not the same, but maybe better. She closed the journal. Outside, the city exhaled into nightfall, and somewhere beneath its restless rhythm, something long asleep stirred awake. Some meals aren't about the food. They're about who still pulls up a chair. Jack never felt entirely comfortable in places with too many matching chairs. Clara's dining room was the kind that belonged in a magazine spread refined, tasteful, soft-toned lighting from an antique pendant and a long wooden table that looked like it hadn't met a juice box in its life. Jack wiped his hands on his jeans out of habit, even though he'd already washed them twice. Lily sat beside him, straight-backed and wide-eyed, as if she'd stumbled into someone else's dream. Clara emerged from the kitchen carrying a roasted chicken, golden-skinned and fragrant. She set it down on the table like it was no big deal, like she hadn't spent the last hour crafting a meal for a man she hadn't seen in 10 years, and the little girl who unknowingly unraveled her world with a glance. I hope she likes this, Clara said, glancing toward Lily. I like chicken, Lily replied politely. And your house smells nice. Clara smiled. Thank you, sweetheart. They all sat a brief pause, settling over the table as they filled their plates. Chicken, roasted carrots, scalloped potatoes, warm bread. Jack hadn't eaten this well maybe since Clara. He found it hard to meet her eyes across the table. Not because he didn't want to, but because he did. Too much. So Lily, Clara said gently, your dad tells me you're in 4th grade? Almost fifth, Lily corrected, chewing carefully. I like art and reading, and sometimes science, but not when we have to do volcano projects. They always explode weird. Jack laughed. Clara did too, genuine and warm, not polite. Your dad used to take pictures, Clara said, turning slightly toward Lily. He was very good. Did he show you any of his work? He has boxes of old photos, Lily said, stabbing a carrot. Some from Africa. Are you in any of them? Jack nearly choked on his bread. Clara blinked, caught off guard, but she recovered with a smile. Yes, I think I might be your dad, and I used to work together a long time ago. Did you love each other? Lily asked, completely unfiltered. Lily Jack said, half warning, half pleading. But Clara didn't flinch. She looked across the table and answered calmly, Yes, we did. Jack stared down at his plate, and then Lily asked. Jack gently set his fork down. Bug, maybe? Let's not. No, it's okay, Clara said. Her voice was kind but steady, and then life got in the way. Like it does. Lily nodded as if that explained everything. Maybe it did. Later, while Clara and Lily washed dishes because Lily insisted and Clara didn't dare refuse, Jack wandered into the living room. He paused near the fireplace where a few framed photos stood neatly in a row. Most were recent Clara, with colleagues at a gala standing beside a podium with some award he didn't recognize. But in the corner, almost hidden behind a vase, was a small worn photo of a group of aid workers in Kenya. He was in it. Younger, thinner, sunburned and laughing, an arm slung over Clara's shoulder like it had always belonged there. You kept that? He asked softly when she returned. I tried not to. Clara admitted it kept showing up. Jack picked it up. His smile in the photo felt like a stranger's, but the arm around her that felt like something he could still recognize. She asked if we loved each other, Clara said behind him. I wasn't expecting that. Jack murmured, She paused. She's bright, gentle. A lot like you. Jack's voice was quieter. She deserves better than I can give her. Don't say that. It's true. Clara stepped forward. You love her. That's already more than some kids ever get. Jack looked at her. Really looked. Her expression had changed. Less guarded, less hurt. Still cautious, but softer. Why did you invite us here? He asked, really? Clara folded her arms, half smiling, because I wasn't ready to leave it the way we left it. And maybe I thought, if I saw you now with her, it might help me understand. Understand what? Why you disappeared, she said. Why you stayed gone? Jack leaned against the fireplace. It wasn't just about Lily or even Hannah. It was shame, Clara. I didn't want you to see me in that mess. I thought disappearing would protect you. You keep saying that, she said gently, but protecting someone doesn't always mean leaving them in the dark. I know that now. They stood quietly for a moment, the weight of the years between them settling like dust in an unopened room. Does it hurt? Clara asked. What being a single parent? Jack thought about it. Some days it breaks you. Some days it saves you. She nodded like she understood, and maybe she did. Lily returned holding a plate of cookies Clara had apparently made just in case she handed one to her dad, and climbed onto the couch beside him, clearly feeling at home. Can we come back? She asked Jack. Looked at Clara, hesitant. Clara smiled, small but sure. You're always welcome. Lily Jack's throat tightened. The warmth in the room wasn't just from the fire. It was something else, something he hadn't felt in years. A stillness, a sense that maybe the world wasn't as closed as he'd thought. Thank you, he said quietly. Clara didn't respond. She didn't need to. She simply sat across from him, hands resting in her lap. The old silence between them now tempered by something new. Not forgiveness, not yet, but maybe the beginning of it. Some truths don't set you free until you speak them out loud. Jack hadn't planned on telling her, not yet, maybe not ever. Some stories are easier to carry alone until someone looks at you with the kind of quiet patience that makes lying by omission feel like cruelty. It was a Tuesday evening when Clara called and asked if Lily could come by again, just for a little baking and homework. She'd said Jack had hesitated, but Lily lit up, and sometimes the simplest answer is the one that makes a child smile. Now Lily was in the kitchen, elbow deep in cookie dough, chattering to Clara about fractions and chocolate chips. Jack sat at the breakfast bar watching the two of them from a careful distance. The scene unfolded like something borrowed from a life not his, a soft evening, warm light, easy laughter. He hadn't realized how starved he'd been for that sound. Clara looked over and smiled. "You okay over there?" Jack nodded. "Yeah, just taking it in." "You're allowed to enjoy it." She said, "I do, I just—" He trailed off. "I'm not used to good things lasting." Clara didn't answer right away. Instead, she wiped her hands and crossed the room sitting beside him. "You know you don't have to explain anything to me, but I want you to know I don't think you were a coward." Jack raised an eyebrow. "You don't—" "No," her voice was quiet. "I think you were lost." "That's different." He stared down at his hands. "I think I owe you the whole truth." Clara didn't interrupt. Jack looked toward the kitchen. Lily was humming to herself, focused on lining up the cookie dough just so. Still small enough to need supervision, but old enough to feel the weight in a room. He lowered his voice. "After my brother died, it was chaos. The funeral. The paperwork, social services, Lily was a mess, confused, clinging to me, like I was the last branch in a storm, and I didn't know what I was doing. Clara, I was barely 30, broke, still chasing gigs. No steady job, no place to live. And then there was Hannah." Clara sat still, listening without blinking. She was my brother's neighbor. They'd known each other for years. She was kind, stable, thoughtful, and sick. Clara's brow furrowed. Sick how? Congenital heart defect. Nothing dramatic at first, but it got worse. She wasn't family, but she'd helped raise Lily in the months before social workers saw her as the better option. "So you married her." Jack nodded slowly. "I knew the system. A blood relative with no income and an unstable career doesn't win against a warm, sick woman with a steady address and a soft-spoken voice. The only way I could keep Lily was to become what the court wanted to see." "And Hannah?" Clara asked, her voice steady but strained. "She knew," Jack said. "We talked about it. She said, 'Let them think what they want. Lily needs you more than I do.' So we signed the papers. I got a license and a mattress on her couch. It wasn't romantic. It was necessary." He exhaled. "She died 4 years later. In her sleep, Lily was 6. I think she still remembers the ambulance." Clara reached out and placed a hand on his. Not tightly, not pitying. Just enough to remind him he wasn't alone in the telling. "I didn't tell anyone." Jack continued. "Not even my parents. I didn't want to explain that kind of arrangement. I told myself it wasn't love, so it didn't count. But I mourned her anyway. She was a good person. She gave me a chance to be a father." Clara's eyes were glossy now, but she didn't cry. "And you never tried to find me." He shook his head. "I was ashamed. I kept thinking, what kind of man disappears into a lie like that and expects the woman he loved to understand? I didn't deserve you." She let the words hang, and then, maybe not. "But you deserve to be forgiven." Jack looked at her, then really looked. There was so much he wanted to say, that he thought of her every day. That every time Lily smiled, he wondered what Clara would have said. That the silence hadn't been distance, it had been fear. But instead he said, "Thank you for letting me tell it." She squeezed his hand once, then released it. "Thank you for not making me guess." They didn't speak of it again that night. The cookies came out, slightly burned at the edges, and Lily proudly declared them perfectly imperfect, which made Clara laugh so hard she nearly dropped the tray. Jack watched them, the woman he had broken, and the child who had stitched him back together, moving in the kitchen like they belonged in the same frame. Later, as they packed up to leave, Clara helped Lily zip up her backpack. Just before they walked out, Lily turned and hugged her. "You're nice," she said into Clara's sweater. "Like, warm." "Nice." Clara knelt down and hugged her back. "You're not so bad yourself." Jack opened the door, then paused. "Clara." She looked up. "I don't know what this is between us now," he said, "but I don't want to run from it." "Not anymore." She smiled softly. "Good, because I'm not running either." That night back home, Jack sat on the edge of Lily's bed. She was almost asleep, curled on her side, hugging the stuffed fox Hannah had sewn her long ago. "Daddy," she murmured. "Yeah, Bug was Clara, the lady from the photo albums." He hesitated. "Yeah, she was Lily," smiled against the pillow. "I like her." Jack brushed a strand of hair from her forehead. Me too. Then he whispered something he hadn't said in years. Not even to himself, I missed her. Sometimes the hardest person to forgive is the one who thought they were protecting you. Clara couldn't sleep. The apartment was silent, except for the low hum of the refrigerator and the occasional creak from the old building settling into the night outside her window. Manhattan shimmered in its usual distant indifference lights, blinking like stars too busy to notice the people underneath them. She stood barefoot in the kitchen, fingers curled around a mug she hadn't touched in 20 minutes. On the counter beside her sat the letter still unopened. It had been there for days now. Sometimes she slid it into a drawer thinking she was done with it. Other times, like tonight, it reappeared, uninvited, insistent. A ghost in a white envelope. She wasn't angry anymore. That was the strange part. For years, she'd imagined what she would say to Jack if he ever came back. She'd picture herself furious, icy, sharp-tongued. She'd say things that would make him feel the hurt she'd lived with. But the man who'd returned wasn't the one who left, and the woman who stood here tonight wasn't the one who'd been left. Clara set the mug down and picked up the envelope. She didn't open it. Not yet. Jack didn't sleep well either. He lay awake on the couch in their tiny apartment, his arm behind his head staring at the ceiling as the radiator clanked and hissed like it was trying to say something he didn't want to hear. Lily was asleep in the next room. The girl had an uncanny ability to sleep through anything. Sirens, thunderstorms, even the time the upstairs neighbor's pipe burst and soaked half their living room ceiling. He envied that what haunted Jack wasn't the past anymore. It was the moment when Clara had said, "You deserve to be forgiven." He hadn't expected it. And the way she'd said it like it was a truth she hadn't fully made peace with, but was choosing anyway, struck something deep. Jack had lived his life making choices that hurt other people in the name of sparing them. He told himself he left Clara to protect her, that marrying Hannah was noble, that sacrificing the future he wanted was what a good man did. But all of it, every choice had cost someone something. He thought of Clara's face when he told her about Hannah. Not angry, not shocked, just tired. Like she'd spent too many years trying to understand something that had no clean answer. Maybe she deserved more than the truth. Maybe she deserved him trying. The next afternoon, Clara was on a Zoom call when her assistant pinged her with a note. "Jack Mercer is downstairs. Says it's not about Lily. Should I send him up?" She stared at the message for a moment, her pulse inexplicably quickening. "Send him up," she typed back. Then to the client on the screen, she added, "I'm terribly sorry. Something's come up. Let's reschedule." By the time she opened the door, Jack was already standing there, looking more composed than she felt. "I know I should have called," he said. "It's okay. Come in." They sat in the living room this time. No cookies, no Lily. Just the two of them and a wide stretch of silence between what they wanted to say and what they feared it might lead to. "I've been thinking." Jack began about how much damage a good intention can still do. Clara folded her hands. "So have I." He nodded. "I made choices." "Clara, choices that cost you things you didn't agree to lose. I thought I was being selfless, but I was really just afraid. Afraid to let you see the mess. Afraid to ask you to stay. You didn't even give me the chance," she said quietly. "I know." He paused. "If I had, would you have come with me?" She didn't answer right away. "I think I would have tried," she said at last. "But I also think you wouldn't have let me. You were too busy sacrificing yourself for everyone else." Jack looked down. "That's the thing. When you spend your life trying to be what other people need, sometimes you forget how to need anyone yourself." Clara studied him. "Do you still do that?" "I'm trying not to." He glanced at her. "I'm trying to be honest now. Even when it's ugly," she nodded slowly. "It's not ugly, it's real." He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out something small, an old camera. Not the sleek digital kind, the kind that smelled like metal and dust and history. "You left this," he said, placing it gently on the table. "In the trunk of our rental car in Uganda. I've kept it. Carried it with me more places than I should admit." Clara stared at it. "That's why some of the photos were missing." She said, a soft laugh in her voice. "I thought I'd return it one day," he said. "But I didn't expect to do it like this." She picked it up, cradling it like something sacred. "I remember this. The shutter always stuck. You said it had personality. It still does." There was a pause, and then Clara said, "I didn't open your letter." Jack didn't flinch. "You don't have to. I want to," she said, "just not because I need answers. Because I want to know what kind of man you were when you wrote it." He exhaled, shoulders easing. Fair enough, they sat for a moment longer. No urgency, no tension, just space. Then Clara looked at him. "What do you want now, Jack?" The question landed gently but squarely between them. He didn't rush the answer. "I want to stop pretending the past has to own the rest of my life." He said, "I want to be a father who isn't just surviving. I want to take pictures again. Not of war zones, but of life. And I want to see where this goes with you." If there's still room for that. Clara was quiet, but there was warmth in her eyes again. Not the fire of new love, the glow of something older, truer, reborn from ashes. "I don't know where this goes either," she said, "but maybe we don't need to." Jack smiled, "As long as we're walking in the same direction." And just like that, something unspoken softened in the room. It wasn't a promise, but it was hope. And for now, that was more than enough. Sometimes to rebuild a future, you have to pick up the tools of a past you once left behind. The garage smelled like dust, old oil, and forgotten ambition. Jack stood in the center of it, hands on his hips, surveying the cluttered space behind Clara's brownstone. The roll-up door squeaked with rust every time it moved, and the window near the ceiling was cracked in the corner, letting in a line of filtered morning sun. Forgotten shelving lined one wall, still holding a box labeled X Mass 16 and a rickety workbench hosted an assortment of half-used paint cans and dried-up brushes. "It's perfect," Jack said. Clara raised an eyebrow from the doorway. "You say that now. Wait until we start sweeping." Lily bounded in already, wearing the oversized t-shirt Clara had handed her as a makeshift painting smock. "Can I be in charge of Spider Patrol?" Jack looked at her. "Only if you promise not to scream when you find one." "No promises," she grinned, snatching a broom. The plan hadn't been a plan. Not really, Clara had simply said, "You should start shooting again one night over tea." Jack had laughed it off, mumbled something about time and money, but she hadn't let it go. "You said it yourself," she told him. "You want to take pictures of life again. Here's a life, here's space. Take it." And so he had. By noon, they were knee-deep in rearranged furniture and swept-out corners. Jack found an old easel in the back and dusted it off, while Clara cleared a space by the window for a makeshift editing table. Lily insisted on decorating the walls with sticky notes that read, "Smile here," and no grumps allowed Jack crouched by a cardboard box filled with his old equipment. The familiar feel of worn leather camera straps and the weight of lenses he hadn't touched in years made his fingers ache with nostalgia. He looked up and caught Clara watching him. "You're quiet," she said. "I'm remembering good things." Mostly he smiled. "It feels like waking up something I buried on purpose." Clara nodded, then knelt beside him. "Can I see?" He handed her a battered old Polaroid. The casing was chipped, the viewfinder slightly foggy. "This one's from Cape Town," he said. "It survived 3 border crossings, a sandstorm, and the time Lily dropped it in a bowl of cereal." Clara laughed. "It's got character. It's got more miles than I do." She turned it over in her hands like it was sacred. "You're going to shoot here, I'd like to." Jack glanced around. Natural lights decent, with some curtains, a backdrop, maybe a small editing station. "I'll help," Clara said before he could finish. Jack looked at her. "You don't have to. I want to." Her voice was steady. "It's not charity, Jack. It's investment in you." In what this could be, he didn't know what to say to that. No one had said anything like it to him in years. That afternoon, Lily sat cross-legged on the garage floor, flipping through Jack's old portfolio, while her father and Clara debated where to mount shelves. Her voice piped up every few minutes with commentary. "This one's cool. The kid jumping over the puddle." "That's Malawi," Jack said. "This woman looks like she's yelling." That's Clara," he added with a smirk. "Hey, Clara," shot him a mock glare. "It was a logistics meltdown," he said innocently. "There were too many goats." "I remember the goats," Clara muttered. Lily giggled. "When they broke for a late lunch, sandwiches and lemonade eaten on overturned crates." Jack noticed something strange. The ache in his chest, the low thrum of anxiety that had lived there for years. It was quieter. Not gone, but softened, like an old wound finally deciding it didn't need to scream anymore. Later that evening, Clara stepped into her kitchen to find Jack bent over the counter, a half-assembled lens in one hand and a screwdriver in the other. Lily sat nearby, drawing a logo for his new business on a sheet of printer paper. Clara leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed. "You look good like that." Jack looked up, squinting, covered in grease. No focused, steady. She paused like someone who belongs somewhere. He straightened, rubbed the back of his neck. "That's the thing I forgot. Belonging isn't about a place. It's about people." She held his gaze for a long moment, then turned to Lily. "Are you hungry, sweetheart?" Lily nodded. "Can we do pancakes for dinner?" Clara smiled. "I like how you think." As the kitchen filled with the scent of syrup and cinnamon, Clara pulled plates from the cabinet while Jack set the table. They moved around each other without instruction, without effort. Like people who had once shared space and were relearning how Lily set her drawing in the middle of the table, a camera with wings. The words "Second Chances Studio" scrawled underneath. Jack stared at it. "I like the name." Clara said he did too. After Lily went to bed, Jack lingered at the door. The studio was still rough, still dusty, still unfinished, but for the first time he didn't feel like he was chasing something. He felt like he was building something. "Clara," he said quietly, "thank you." She stepped a little closer. "You don't have to thank me, I do," he said. "Not just for the space. For staying open. After everything." She hesitated, then reached for his hand. "I never stopped hoping you'd become the man I always saw in you." Jack's throat tightened. "And if I'm still becoming him," Clara smiled, "then I'll be here." Watching for a moment, they didn't speak, and then gently she kissed his cheek. "See you tomorrow, Jack." He nodded, heart pounding as he stepped into the cool night air. And for the first time in years, he didn't feel like a man looking backward. He felt like a man going home. Children see the truth long before adults are ready to admit it. The Saturday morning sunlight poured into the garage like a quiet blessing. Dust motes danced in golden beams as Jack adjusted the fabric backdrop against the far wall. It had taken 3 days of drilling, rearranging, and mild cursing, but the space finally looked like a studio. Not a professional one, at least not yet, but a place where things could begin again. Second Chances Studio. The name had stuck. It was Lily's idea, and neither Jack nor Clara had the heart or the reason to change it. In fact, the words had started to feel like a mantra, a permission. Now, as Lily sat on a stool in front of the backdrop, with Clara crouched beside her, brushing a lock of hair behind the girl's ear, Jack lifted the camera and looked through the viewfinder. Click. Another moment captured, and for once not taken from the world, but given back to it. "Okay, last one," Jack said, smiling. "Give me your fierce explorer." Look. Lily narrowed her eyes and crossed her arms, trying to appear as intimidating as a 10-year-old in overalls could be. Click. "Perfect. Remind me never to cross you in the jungle." Lily giggled and jumped off the stool. "Do I get paid in cookies?" "Only if you sign a model release form." Jack teased, handing her the camera so she could see the results. Clara watched them from the corner, arms folded, a quiet smile tugging at her lips. She'd been careful not to let herself get swept up in the rhythm of their days together. Jack dropping by in the mornings, helping Lily with homework in the evenings, sharing dinners that turned into long, winding conversations. But the truth was, she liked the new routine more than she dared admit. She liked the way Jack laughed, now softer and less guarded. She liked how Lily sought her out with questions and secrets and quiet trust. And she liked how this place, the garage, the apartment, the trio they were becoming, felt less like a visit and more like a beginning. That afternoon, Clara baked. It wasn't something she did often, but the scent of cinnamon rolls always reminded her of her grandmother, and somehow the thought of warm dough and sugar made the day feel fuller. Lily hovered nearby, perched on a bar stool, her legs swinging as she narrated a story about a classmate who tried to juggle apples and ended up with a black eye. And then Mrs. Saunders said, "Gravity is undefeated." And we all laughed except Jacob, who was crying. Clara tried not to laugh too hard. Sounds like a very educational moment. It was awesome. Jack walked in. Just as Clara was icing the rolls, wiping his hands with a rag. His shirt was speckled with sawdust and a smudge of something, Dark streaked his cheek. Smells amazing in here. Clara turned to glance at him. You look like you got into a fist fight with a 2x4. Only lost on points, Lily looked between them, then leaned over toward Clara conspiratorially. He only loses when he wants to impress you. Clara raised an eyebrow. Is that so? Jack chuckled. Traitor. That evening after dinner and dishes, the three of them curled up on the couch to watch an old animated movie. Clara didn't remember which one it was. Something with forest creatures and an overly enthusiastic raccoon, but she remembered the moment Lily leaned against her shoulder halfway through, warm and sleepy and safe. She didn't move, not even when Lily whispered something so quiet, it took Clara a second to register the words, "Can I call you Mom?" The room didn't go still. It just softened. Clara turned her head slowly. What Lily looked up, eyes big and hopeful. I mean, just, if it's okay. I still remember my first mom a little, but you feel like what a mom is supposed to feel like. Clara couldn't speak at first. Her throat closed around something too big for words. Jack on the other end of the couch sat frozen. Lily added quickly, You don't have to say yes. I just wanted you to know. I already think it, even if I don't say it. Clara's voice came out rougher than she intended, sweetheart. I would be honored. Lily beamed, then curled back under her arm, as if nothing extraordinary had just happened. But Jack and Clara sat very still, eyes meeting across the girl who'd unknowingly stitched their past into something new. Later, when Lily had been tucked into the guest room with her stuffed fox and a nightlight Clara had bought just for her, Jack lingered in the hallway. Clara joined him, leaning her shoulder against the doorframe. That was unexpected, he nodded slowly. She's never said that before. Not even with Hannah. Clara looked at him. Are you okay with it? Jack exhaled. I think I'm more than okay. I think I'm grateful I didn't know how much she'd needed that, or how much I had. They stood there a while, letting the quiet fill in the spaces they hadn't found the words for. Yet finally Clara said, You know this changes things, right? Jack glanced at her. How so? You're not just someone passing through anymore. You're part of her story now. Permanently. He looked down the hallway toward Lily's room. I want to be. If you'll let me be part of yours too. Clara didn't answer immediately, but her fingers slid gently into his and she nodded. I think you already are. That night, Clara opened the drawer beside her bed and took out the envelope one more time. She looked at it for a long while, then she smiled just faintly and left it sealed. She didn't need the man from the letter anymore. She had the one standing in her hallway. Sometimes the hardest doors to walk through are the ones opened with love. Jack stood in the doorway of the garage-turned-studio, his hands tucked into the back pockets of his jeans, watching as sunlight spilled across the new backdrop Clara had installed that morning. The light caught on the edge of a stool where Lily had sat just yesterday, her little feet swinging a smile too wide for the frame. Everything about this space had changed, so had he. He didn't feel like the man who'd knocked on Clara Winslow's door by accident only a few weeks ago. That man had been hungry for work, haunted by the past, and bent under the weight of responsibilities he wore like chains. Now he was still tired, still broken ways money couldn't fix. But something in him had uncoiled. Something tight, cold, and quiet had begun to melt. The garage smelled like sawdust and clean linen. Now not regret. And in his chest, hope no longer felt like a betrayal of reality. He walked back into Clara's kitchen to rinse off a smudge of paint and found her already there, pouring 2 cups of coffee. You always know, he said with a crooked smile. She handed him one. You're easy to read when you're lost in thought. That little furrow shows up between your eyes like a warning light. He rubbed his forehead self-consciously. Guess I need a new poker face. No, she said gently. I like that you wear your thoughts where people can see them now. They stood by the counter in a comfortable silence, sipping coffee like they'd done it 100 times, as if there hadn't been 10 years of distant silence and ache between them, as if none of it mattered now. I've been thinking, Clara said after a moment. That's always dangerous, Jack replied. She gave him a playful glare, then softened. You and Lily, this back and forth can't be easy. Jack shook his head. It's not. She's resilient, but the commute, the school juggling, bedtime at a different place every other night, it's a lot. That's what I was thinking about. She hesitated, eyes dropping to the steam rising from her mug. What if you didn't have to commute? Jack blinked. What do you mean, I mean? She took a breath. What if you two moved in here? The words hung in the air like a balloon between them, fragile, beautiful, and terrifying. All at once, Jack didn't answer. His fingers tightened slightly around the mug. It wouldn't be charity, she said quickly. The garage is already yours, you're working. Lily loves it here and I. She stopped herself. I'm not trying to fix anything. I don't like watching you pack up every night like you're still waiting to be told to leave. Jack looked down at his shoes. Clara stepped closer. You've been part of this house for weeks now. You're already in the rhythm of this place. I'm just saying, maybe we stop pretending it's temporary. Jack's jaw worked. He didn't know what to say. 1,000 instincts warred inside him. Gratitude, fear, defensiveness, the gnawing ache of old pride. He'd lived so long in survival mode that the idea of belonging somewhere, really belonging, felt foreign. I don't know if I fit here, Clara. She looked surprised. You don't think you belong? He shook his head. You live in a place where the furniture matches, where the light fixtures don't buzz when you turn them on. You work with people who wear tailored suits and understand words like corporate strategy, and you're the man who builds something out of nothing in a dusty garage, she said evenly. You're the man who shows up when you say you will, who fixes what's broken, who raises a little girl with more love than most children see in a lifetime. Jack's throat tightened. I didn't fall for a bank account, Jack. I didn't wait all these years to find someone who fits the furniture. His eyes shimmered, but he didn't let the tears fall. Not yet. What if it doesn't work? He asked softly. Clara reached for his hand, then we face it together. He stared at her fingers, wrapped around his, the way they steadied him, without demanding anything. He remembered all the years he'd spent believing love was a door he wasn't allowed to knock on again. Now here it was, wide open. That night he told Lily. They sat on the curb just outside the brownstone as dusk rolled in the city behind them, humming like a lullaby. She balanced a juice box on her knee while he spoke. So Jack said carefully, Clara asked if we'd like to stay here for real. Lily looked up, her eyes searching his face. Like, live here. He nodded. She was quiet for a moment, chewing on her straw. Would I still go to my school? Yes. Can I still paint the walls in the studio? Probably not, he chuckled, but maybe one. Lily tilted her head. Will, Clara, be my real mom? Jack hesitated, then said, only if we all agree. It's not something we decide overnight. She nodded solemnly. Okay, another pause, I'd like that. She said, I feel like I already live here in my heart. Jack looked at her. Sometimes kids say the thing adults are too scared to admit. Later, when the apartment lights had dimmed and Lily was curled into the guest bed, she had begun to call hers Jack, stood in the hallway once again. Clara emerged from her bedroom in pajama pants and a sweatshirt, holding a book and a smile that made his chest ache. Well, she asked. She said yes, he replied. In her heart, she already lives here. Clara laughed, and it was quiet and sweet, and so full of grace it nearly undid him. He stepped closer, not too close, just enough to feel her presence warm and steady and real. I'm scared, he admitted. Me too, she whispered. And then for the first time in 10 years, Jack didn't run from what he felt. He leaned in and kissed her gently, fully, without apology. When they parted, Clara touched her forehead to his and said softly, welcome home. Some words lose their urgency with time, but gain their truth. It had been tucked away in the bottom of a linen drawer. Clara found it by accident. She was searching for a spare set of sheets for Lily's bed now, officially her room in every sense, when her hand grazed something unfamiliar. Folded carefully between an old flannel pillowcase and a scarf she hadn't worn in years was the letter. The letter Jack had told her about, the one he wrote 10 years ago and never sent. She held it in her hand now, sitting on the edge of her bed, the weight of it disproportionate to its size. She had told herself she didn't need to read it, that she knew who Jack was now, and that what mattered was who he had become, not who he had been. But tonight something in her wouldn't let it go. She peeled the flap open slowly. The paper inside was creased, the ink smudged slightly where it had pressed against itself for too long. His handwriting was familiar. A little rushed, but unmistakably his, she began to read. Clara, I don't know how to begin this because I don't know how to end it either. Maybe I'm writing this more for me than for you. Maybe this letter will never find its way to your hands, but if it does, I want you to know what I should have said in person. I left not because I stopped loving you, but because I didn't know how to love you and still do what I thought was right. My brother is gone. I came back to bury him and found a little girl who had no one. Lily doesn't understand death. She just knows she's been left again and again, and I couldn't be the next person to leave her. The courts won't give her to me. I'm not married, not settled, not safe. But there's a way, Clara. There's this woman, Hannah, she's kind, and she's sick, and she's offered to help. If I marry her, I can be Lily's guardian. I can keep her out of the system. I can give her a home. But to do that, I have to disappear from the life I had with you. I can't ask you to wait. I can't ask you to follow. That would be selfish, and you've already given me more than I deserved. You have a future ahead of you that doesn't involve secondhand heartbreak. Don't waste it on someone like me. But I need you to know this. You were never a mistake, not a moment. You were the only thing that felt certain in a world that was falling apart, and I will love you quietly always, Jack. Clara read it once, then again. By the third time, her hands were trembling. She folded the letter back along its worn creases, then pressed it to her chest. A deep ache bloomed behind her ribs. Not grief, not anger, but the unbearable tenderness of understanding. She had imagined 1,000 reasons why he left. None of them had been this. None had included this kind of sacrifice, this kind of sorrow, and this kind of love. The next morning, Jack found her in the garage studio rearranging light stands for an upcoming shoot. She wore jeans and a faded college sweatshirt, her hair pulled back, no makeup. Just Clara, raw and grounded. He knew something had shifted the moment he stepped in. It was in the way she looked at him, steady deep, like she'd seen a part of him. He hadn't meant to share and didn't regret it. You found it, he said. She nodded last night. He set down the toolkit and walked toward her, unsure of what came next. I meant every word he said quietly. Even if I was a coward for not mailing it. You weren't a coward, she said. You were a man doing what he thought he had to do. I just wish you'd let me decide for myself whether I wanted to stand with you in it. Jack swallowed hard. I see that now. Clara looked around the space at the lights, the cameras, the faint smell of coffee and wood polish. You built something beautiful in the ruins, Jack. Not just this place with Lily. With your life, it's not perfect, but it's honest. He looked at her, overwhelmed. I don't know how to thank you for giving me this chance, for believing in me after everything. You don't have to thank me, she said. Just don't leave again. Not even when it gets hard, I won't. His voice cracked slightly. I'm done running. She stepped closer, then we keep building together. Later that day, as they walked through the neighborhood park with Lily between them, Clara held Jack's hand openly for the first time in public. Lily skipped ahead, twirling with the easy grace of a child who believed the world was safe. As they passed an older couple sitting on a bench, the woman smiled and said, "Beautiful family." Jack looked at Clara. Her smile was quiet but luminous. He didn't correct the woman. He didn't need to. For the first time in his life, Jack Mercer didn't feel like an outsider to his own story. He was in it, rooted real. That night, after Lily had gone to bed and the dishes had been done and the house had fallen into that warm hush that only comes when love has settled into the walls, Clara brought out the letter again. She handed it to Jack. I want you to keep it, she said. Not because I need to remember the man you were, but because I want you to remember how far you've come. Jack unfolded the letter one last time, then tucked it gently into the drawer of the desk in the studio. He looked up at Clara and smiled. I'm not afraid of remembering anymore. Love isn't found. It's chosen again and again, even after the storms. It rained the night Jack almost walked away. Not the dramatic, cinematic kind of rain, just a steady whispering drizzle that blurred the streetlights and softened the sharpness of the city. The kind of rain that made the world feel quieter than it really was. The kind that matched the silence in Jack's chest. He stood by the living room window, one hand in his pocket, the other, holding a folded note he hadn't meant to write. Clara's apartment was dark except for the warm lamp in the corner, casting a golden ring around the couch where Lily had fallen asleep, while watching an old holiday movie. Her legs were curled up, arms wrapped around her fox, her chest rising and falling in the deep rhythm of trust. She was home here. That was the thing that made this harder. Jack had never meant to stay. Not this long. Not this deep. The plan had been simple. Deliver the package, offer a belated apology, let her decide how much closure she wanted, and then fade back into the quiet life he knew. But now there were fingerprints on his heart. A girl who whispered mom with wonder. A woman who held his gaze like she saw the man he'd almost become. And it terrified him, because loving them meant risking breaking them again. Because the last time he'd loved like this, he left a letter instead of staying. He didn't hear Clara approach, but he felt the shift in the air as she stepped beside him, coffee mug in hand, her hair slightly damp from the shower. "You've been quiet tonight," she said softly. Jack nodded. "Just thinking." She followed his gaze out the window. The rain was gentler now, soft streaks across the glass. "You're not running, are you?" His jaw tightened. He turned to her, tried to speak. The words stuck. Clara set her mug down and faced him fully. "If you need to go, Jack, then go. But say it to my face this time. Don't leave a note." Jack exhaled sharply. "I'm not trying to leave, but you're scared." He looked away. "I don't know if I can be enough for all this. For you. For her. For the life that's happening here." "You already are," she said simply. "You just haven't accepted it yet." He met her eyes. "I don't want to hurt either of you." "You already did," she replied, not unkindly. "Years ago, but we're still here. That's the miracle of forgiveness, Jack. It doesn't rewrite the past, it just chooses not to live there." Silence stretched between them, not cold, not final. Then Clara stepped closer. "I waited for you," once she said, voice trembling. "I won't wait again. Not because I don't love you, but because now I know. If love isn't chosen, it isn't real." Jack closed his eyes. The weight in his chest cracked just a little, and something broke free. He reached into his pocket, pulled out the note he'd written. It was short, barely a paragraph scribbled in the garage after Lily had gone to bed. He handed it to Clara without a word. She unfolded it and read, "I don't know how to stay without wondering if I deserve to, but I'm learning that maybe love isn't about deserving. Maybe it's just about showing up every day and choosing to stay even when you're scared." Clara looked up, eyes glassy. He spoke, voice barely above a whisper. "I want to stay. I want to choose this." Every day she stepped forward and took his hand. "I walk with you," she said, "not I forgive you. Not I need you, just that I walk with you." The next morning they walked Lily to school together for the first time. Hand in hand, three people moving through the cool morning air, like a single thread stitched into something quiet and whole. Lily stopped at the entrance, turned to them and asked, "Will you be here when I get back?" Jack nodded. Every time she smiled, then ran toward her friends, her laughter floating like music. Clara looked at Jack, still scared. He shook his head slowly. No, just humbled. That afternoon, Clara found him in the studio fine-tuning the lighting setup for his first paid portrait session in nearly 5 years. He wore a button-up shirt sleeves, rolled his hands steady, his eyes focused. A man who had stopped looking for exit signs and started building rooms with open doors. "You look good in your element," she said, leaning in the doorway. He smiled without turning. "I miss this." "You didn't miss it," she said. "You carried it with you. Just needed the right moment to bring it back to life." He turned to her, camera in hand. "Can I take your picture?" Clara blinked. Now Jack nodded. "Right now. Not because I need the perfect light or setup, just because you're here. And I want to remember that." She stepped into the frame. He raised the camera and clicked. That evening, they sat together on the porch as twilight settled around them. No grand declarations, no need for them. Just two people choosing each other, choosing to walk forward together. Some stories don't end. They just find a place to rest together. It was Lily's birthday, the kind of golden early spring day where the city felt softer, like it had exhaled after a long winter. The rooftop of Clara's building had been transformed with a simple grace that somehow made it more beautiful than any expensive venue Jack could have rented. String lights crisscrossed above, swaying in the breeze, and a long wooden table borrowed from the studio was covered in a white linen cloth, a pitcher of lemonade, and a cake that leaned slightly to the left. "It's homemade," Clara had said with a wink. "Tilted cakes are more heartfelt." Lily didn't mind. In fact, she beamed at the sight of it, her cheeks flushed with excitement and frosting from a taste test gone slightly rogue. She wore a blue dress with tiny embroidered stars picked out by Clara and had her curls pulled into two bouncy puffs that danced every time she moved. Around her stood a small gathering of neighbors' classmates and even Mr. DeSoto, the grumpy retired history teacher from the third floor, who brought a gift wrapped in newspaper and muttered something about a child should always have a compass. Clara moved easily among them, refilling cups, laughing warmly, her presence effortless. She wasn't trying to impress anyone. She belonged here. And Jack, he belonged here with her. He stood back for a moment, camera slung over his shoulder, watching the two of them. Clara cutting slices of cake, Lily handing them out with exaggerated care. They looked like a family because they were. As the sun began to dip toward the horizon, painting the sky in soft pinks and golds, Jack raised his camera and captured the scene. Clara brushing a crumb from Lily's cheek. Lily mid-laugh, the soft glow of twilight, wrapping around them, both like a blessing. Click, not a pose shot, just life real and unfolding. He lowered the camera, smiling. "Are you gonna cry?" Clara teased, stepping beside him with a cupcake in hand. "Maybe a little," Jack said. "But don't worry. I'll blame the sun in my eyes." She bumped his shoulder gently. "It's okay to be happy. You know I am," he said, quieter now. "I didn't think I could be, but I am." She looked at him, her expression softening. "That's all I ever wanted for you." Jack reached for her hand, interlacing their fingers. "Do you remember that first day I knocked on your door?" "How could I forget?" Clara said, laughing. "You looked like a man who just stepped off a different planet. I felt like one." And now he turned toward the rooftop, the sky, the little girl dancing in circles with two of her friends. "Now I feel like I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be." When the sun finally sank below the city skyline, they gathered in a small circle, Lily in the middle with a candlelit cupcake in her hands. "Make a wish," someone called Lily, squeezed her eyes shut, then opened them and blew with gusto. The candle flickered out and cheers followed, but Jack saw the way she looked at Clara right after the tiny smile that curved her lips. Later, as the guests trickled away and the rooftop quieted, Lily sat curled up in a blanket on one of the patio chairs, watching the stars blink into view. "Best birthday ever," she murmured sleepily. Jack crouched beside her. "You're getting too big for me to carry, you know?" She smirked. "You'll carry me anyway." "You're probably right." Clara walked over with a cup of cocoa and kissed Lily's forehead. "Want to head down in a minute," Lily said, gazing at the sky. "Can we stay a little longer? It feels like magic up here." They sat in silence for a while, the kind that didn't need filling. Then Lily looked up at them, her voice soft but sure. "Can I tell people you're my parents now? Both of you." Jack and Clara glanced at each other. Clara knelt beside her sweetheart. "You can tell the world." Lily grinned, then yawned mid-smile. "Cool." Back downstairs after Lily had fallen asleep in her room painted in pale yellow and littered with books and drawings. Jack and Clara stood in the living room with the windows open to the breeze. Jack poured 2 small glasses of wine. They clinked without words. Clara leaned her head on his shoulder. "We're doing it, you know? What living a life we don't need to run from." He kissed the top of her head. "Took us long enough, worth every second," she said. They moved to the window, looking out at the city lights. The same skyline that once made Jack feel small now looked like a promise, a reminder that the past was a place they'd both visited, but not a place they lived in anymore. "I used to think love was about grand gestures," Clara said. "Chasing people through airports, confessions in the rain." Jack smiled. "You did always like a dramatic ending. But this," she said, gesturing to the quiet apartment, the soft laughter echoing from memory. "This is the kind of love that lasts, the kind that stays for the hard days, the boring Tuesdays, the burnt toast and late bills. I'll take burnt toast." Jack said, "If it comes with you." Clara looked at him, really looked, and saw not just the man he had become, but the boy she once loved, the father he had chosen to be, and the partner he had quietly learned how to become. "Then let's build it," she said. "The life we thought we missed. Let's build it anyway." Jack nodded. "Together." Outside, the city breathed on. But inside the apartment above 19D, time slowed. And in that stillness, a man who once walked away now stood still. A woman who once waited now walked beside him. And a little girl who had once been alone now slept in the heart of a home where every room whispered, "You are loved." We'd love to know where you're watching from today. Drop a comment below and tell us where in the world you're tuning in. It's always a joy to see how far these stories travel. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you won't miss the next chapter in our collection of meaningful tales. Thank you so much for spending your time with us. Until next time, stay kind, stay hopeful, and never stop believing in second chances.